This is the NativeScript community chat for July 1st. Welcome to July. We made it as a world to July, so that's good news. Still a few people joining. We'll give a couple quick updates. We've merged several contributor PRs over the past week. This includes Ken's resizeImage. This is actually a new feature to the ImageSource to resize images on iOS and Android directly from an ImageSource. Really nice PR, Ken, by the way. Who I know is on the call. Ken is a friend from Portland, Oregon. And we'll probably update the docs to reflect that by next week, as well as publish the core modules version that will include that. There's several other kind of minor patch changes that came in through those contributor PRs that would be nice to get out. Beyond that, Angular 10 support is in progress. Actually been working on it over the past day, yesterday and today, and looking to try to get that support published by tomorrow. Mainly some changes to the targeting for the TypeScript compilation. They dropped support for ES5, which NativeScript Angular had always been compiled for ES5. So this will publish it for in target ES 2015, and also going to use ng packager to package it up. So again, hopefully that will be available by tomorrow. On the Angular 9 front, if you need help or assistance with Angular 9 or having trouble, ping us. Send an email to support@nativescript.org. In fact, I'll mention it here. We've done this for a few other people who are having trouble. I have submitted PRs to a few projects over the past week to kind of help stumbling blocks. Most common stumbling blocks are either related to the copy webpack plugin, breaking change that came down, also some scopes changes for imports, and then some trouble along the post-install ngcc or the ngcc config. So definitely feel free to ping us and let us know. We'd be happy to help you get past a stumbling point there. We are also planning to rewrite the Angular integration from scratch for Angular 11. So the latest word is that Angular 11 will be available in the fall sometime. We were planning to do it for Angular 10, but Angular 10 dropped last week. So we knew that was going to drop sometime over the summer, but weren't sure if that was going to be sooner or later part of the summer. But excited Angular 10 came along anyway, and we'll get support for that. But yeah, we do want to do a clean rewrite for Angular 11. The reason is that the Angular integration for NativeScript was written at a pretty early time in Angular's evolution. It was really at the early moments of Angular 2 and the whole modernization of Angular. And since it's kind of been around since then, which I guess is, I don't know if that's 2017 or perhaps earlier than that, there's some integration points in that are fairly old and a bit outdated. So we kind of just want to take a clean take. A lot of the troubles with the router we want to really address squarely, and perhaps just do a different take on the way that Angular integration is handled. And yeah, we expect that to be probably ready around the fall to end of August timeframe is the target, which I think is also when Angular 11 is generally expected. Some other updates, iOS 14 support. So we have a PR pending on the iOS runtime now. This is for JavaScript core. A rather exciting thing that was mentioned perhaps last week was the iOS 14 release notes actually mentioned NativeScript in them. It's the first time in the framework's history that that has ever happened before. We were really excited to see it because they actually suggested exactly what the fix was needed to make it work, and it was a subtle thing in the JavaScript core runtime. So this pending pull request should solve that there. Good news also on iOS 14, iOS V8 engine, which is currently in beta right now, already is compatible with iOS 14. So the iOS V8 engine is the new iOS engine that we plan to make public sometime this month. We've been targeting July for the official release of that for quite some time now, and we've had this beta running in some of our own apps, but we definitely welcome everyone out there to try it. There's a new beta just published this morning, so this was just from July 1st today, this morning. and includes one subtle fix that we found related to app exit and cleaning up of the V8 isolate when the app exits. So if you have not tried the V8 engine yet, definitely try this version. You can swap your tns-ios version in your package to this and just do a clean build and run, and feel free to let us know if you encounter anything there. It's looking pretty good, and we're all very excited about this for sure. But again, yeah, it's already compatible with iOS 14. For those out there that are playing with the 14 beta, one thing to keep in mind is that the expected release date for iOS 14 is September. I think the latest estimate is September 14th to 18th. So it's still a bit away for a public release. Of course, Apple could always announce that sooner, but at least some reassurance that I don't think you need to panic if there is something with iOS 14 there that you're seeing if you're playing with the beta. But another thing to keep in mind is SDK vendors. You know, SDK vendors also take time to update their SDKs. One in particular on one of our own production projects that we work on, Airship has not updated to iOS 14 either. And so depending on how many plugins you use, you might have some things to work with there. So always check your plugins and check the vendor open source repos for any of the SDKs you use to make sure that they're actually iOS 14 compatible. More likely it's not necessarily a NativeScript issue, but more just an SDK issue to deal with there. NativeScript Ionic, for those that watched IonicConf from this past week, IonicConf brought a lot of really valuable material. We're friends with the Ionic community, and we also have been working on an Ionic integration to provide the NativeScript experience in the Ionic framework. It is an exciting experience. We're actually starting to work with people on this integration itself. There's a page up at nativescript.org/Ionic right now. So actually, I'll make a mention of it here. If you're interested in this, you can go to this page, and if you subscribe to the list, we'll be emailing some details on that probably in the next 2 weeks, I'd say. We're going to probably add an FAQ up to that page about what that integration is about. Some questions have already kind of arisen out of that as to what the difference is between Capacitor and NativeScript. All really good, valid questions. I'll just state on this call, really the plan is to roll it up as a Capacitor plugin, so it's really meant to be part of the Capacitor ecosystem. Ionic has a great plan around Capacitor and how that works for everything that they're doing around the Ionic framework, and so this integration will be provided in that same capacity. But the short end of it is it will allow you to tie directly to the platform API from an Ionic context. So if you're building an Ionic app and you want that experience of NativeScript, you can have that. There's also some other potential to start to mix and match some native views with Web Views 2 in cases that you need that. So there's a great deal of potential here in what this integration will provide in the long term. But I think the short-term use case would probably be more SDK integration related. Beyond that, we joined Open Collective just last week, and we've opened up GitHub sponsors. Really appreciate and thank you to all the community that have shown support through Open Collective. It means a lot to us, and probably by the end of the summer, we'll have a process of using some of those sponsorship funds to fund bug fixing and also priority items that the community wants. So that all goes to really benefit everyone out there in the community to help make the framework better. So really appreciate all the support there. We are continuing to talk with the OpenJS Foundation. One of our plans this year is to submit NativeScript to OpenJS. And for those out there who've kind of wondered what that's about, the main thing is that we want to make sure that NativeScript survives even beyond our team. You know, we care about NativeScript just individually, but we also care about it as far as being a really nice addition to the JavaScript ecosystem. And so we want to submit NativeScript OpenJS to secure its longevity in the JavaScript ecosystem as a whole, as well as encourage some cross-community collaboration. There's some possible integrations with projects like Electron that just joined OpenJS to maybe do desktop API direct synchronous ability, the way you can do with mobile and NativeScript now. There's some potential tie-ins with Electron there. So OpenJS is very much something that's ongoing. We'll be publishing a formal governance docs by next week. This is usually what you see on a lot of open source projects. We're going to probably model ours off of the ESLint project, which is also part of OpenJS. They identify some of the structure on how the open source framework is maintained and also governed. We'll have a technical steering committee, which will essentially be our core team on our side, who is primarily helping with core fixes and publishing updates, but we're also going to provide a pathway for those out there in the community that want to contribute more, that want to be more involved, that they could become part of the technical steering committee as well, to help on some of those efforts, as well as have perhaps a louder voice in areas that they want to have a louder voice on. So that's all kind of part of just the opening of the framework to let the community drive it more. And that's all the updates we have from our side right now. I know that Jamie has something to potentially share too when he's ready, related to an experiment we were doing in the Webpack config related to Babel Loader. And Jamie, if you have something there, just chime in if you're ready to show it.
I'm ready to go. It is
okay.
10 minutes to get going.
All right.
So I better share my screen. Host is, if you could allow me to share screen.
Oh yes. Let's see. It should says it should allow you now.
Okay. I will choose desktop 1. Okay, I'll just give that a moment to buffer. Is that looking good yet?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay. So here's the commit. What we're going to be doing is migrating a standard NativeScript blank TS project from using TS Loader to using Babel Loader. Advantages of that being, if you're using Babel somewhere in your pipeline anyway, it makes it a lot easier to write the Webpack config, and it does a one-step transformation. So instead of with TS Loader, it going from TypeScript to JavaScript and then applying Babel transformations, with Babel Loader, you do one step from TypeScript to Babelified JavaScript. So all that involves is, let's go into Webpack. Okay, we're already here. What did I do compared to before? You can see the diff over there. I just need to orientate myself. Line 63. So first up, I brought in these Babel options. They will look pretty familiar to any time you've used Babel options before. You need to bring a few dependencies along. So we're going to bring in command line, core. Well, you can read all of those. So the main thing involved for a bare TypeScript project is you need env and you need TypeScript. If you're doing a flavor such as React or Vue or something, you'll probably need their preset for that given flavor.
Is there a Babel flavor for Angular too?
Don't know. I've never made an Angular app.
I'll check.
So next, if you had a Babel plugin for HMR purposes, like I assume Angular will have a HMR plugin of its own that has some sort of Babel integration, you would shove that in here like I've done for React's HMR solution. But for TypeScript, we're good to go already, for regular blank TypeScript. And then you've got these plugin proposer class properties. That just seems to be a thing that Babel needs to have for translating TypeScript classes over to JavaScript. So what else did I do? Over on line 233. Just a bug fix, actually. Tell it to resolve JavaScript as well as TS files. For some reason, it wasn't picking up JS before. And then the main thing, I have removed TS Loader, as you can see in the diff, and I've shoved in Babel Loader instead. It takes those Babel options that I specified earlier. If you were pulling in React, you'd make sure that it also optionally takes, it can pull in JSX, TSX. I don't know if that's quite the right way to write it. If you're doing view, you make sure that view goes in there or whatever. And then finally, we can actually take out, as we've taken out over here, you can take out the fork TS checker Webpack plugin, because you no longer need to be checking the TypeScript as part of the build. It can actually be done entirely by your IDE. And you can have, if you want to make sure, rather than just the currently viewed file gets type checked, you can have a TSC process, like watching the whole project if you do want that. So I'll show you what HMR looks like now. I'll just shove in a label that says the word bonjour. Let's save it. 1, 2, bang. There in about 2 seconds. Switch it over to buongiorno. And then again, sub 2 seconds. I think that's pretty fast.
Wow, Jamie, that's really, really neat. So the Babel loader, I'm curious, we'll have to try this on some Angular projects, and it's possible if this brings enough speed and is stable and it makes sense, we can make this the default. We have been working on a dev Webpack update branch, bringing a lot of dependencies there that have been neglected for a bit up to date. And I think along with those changes, we can make this the default. So anyone who's watching this can try this on their projects. If you run into something there, you might post an issue about it. But definitely feel free to experiment with that on your own projects, and we may make this the default if it works out for all project types. And even if it doesn't work for all project types, maybe it makes sense on some. Obviously, in the React case here, it looks like it's pretty fantastic. So. Any cons about this approach, Jamie, that you want to mention? Is there any side effects or things that would not work with the strategy that you can think of?
So the only things to be aware of are that const enums are not supported, and also it requires projects to have isolated modules on. I think that's possibly a TS config option. I don't really know deeply what the consequences of that are, but it was no problem for React NativeScript.
Why doesn't it support const enums? Is that because it's using a older TS version or a TypeScript version or something?
It's something to do with I might be wrong here, but the information being lost. Because the way Babel Loader works is it strips off the TypeScript syntax and then just reduces it to JavaScript syntax. It sounds like it doesn't actually do a transpilation step, if that makes any sense. It kind of reduces it to ES next or whatever. And for some reason, const enums don't quite work with all of that. There's a blog post somewhere that explains why it doesn't work, or an issue of filing, but I don't actually know completely.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jamie. That is really very exciting, and I actually want to try this on a couple of projects myself, hopefully by tomorrow.
No problem.
I will, let's see, if you want to flip the screen back, I'll just pop over here. And I think that's all the updates from this end. So we'll open it up. If you guys have questions, feel free to say so.
If there's nothing needed from me, I need to head off for dinner. So I'll just check if anyone needs any questions on the Babel Loader stuff.
Sounds good, Jamie. Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, sure. Any questions on Babel Loader?
Jamie, I just had a quick question. Okay. Just as you go forward with the new site and the new way of documenting NativeScript and new governance, where is this kind of stuff going to be kind of written down for people to track along with, like experiments and developments like this?
Governance and stuff, that's more Nathan's area.
Sure, yeah, but as like you just presented that, but like how do we find those config changes that we need to make, or are those on a blog somewhere?
Right, I would hope. So this is sort of our first contact on the idea of migrating to Babel Loader at all. We wouldn't want users to have to adopt this. I would hope that each of us in charge of each different flavor of NativeScript, and of course in Studio, would have a play, see if Babel Loader looks good, and we would just make it so that the next time you, next time you do a NativeScript command line install, you would find that it's migrated over to Babel Loader.
I can help you out there, Jamie. Yeah, Caleb, great question though too there. I think that, part of these calls is to show some cutting edge stuff. I'd say that we're trying on our end and kind of share some bits that we are potentially wanting to migrate to. Jamie and I were just talking about that this morning. And I think part of the process and what's nice to have you all join is that if you're interested in that, give it a try. If you get good results with it as well, then we might make it the default. We're going to do the same on our end because Jamie actually just kind of brought this up the other day. And so it's become a potential pathway forward to even faster live sync, which we're exploring a lot on. We're even exploring using sockets to do live sync instead of file hash changes. So there's a lot of stuff related to Webpack, the way to build, the live sync that we're investigating. But I think if this plays out, certainly for us on some projects, we'll probably do a blog post on it, Caleb. So I think to answer your question as far as what changes are those, where can you track those more tightly and see exactly what changes you need to make, we'll probably post some blog on this in the next couple days if we find that this actually works consistently.
Great.
Does it sound like we need a place to discuss like NativeScript future, like communally in text?
Yeah. So we have part of the TSC, and what we're going to do with the code of governance is we're probably going to create an admin repo that's going to be a central place to talk about more high-level things, I think, as a community. So this topic could kind of fit there. It's more to separate high-level discussions away from the actual code engineering itself and talk about future directions as well. So along with the code of governance, what we publish, which is going to be published on nativescript.org, but we're also probably going to mirror those in markdown files on an admin repo that'll be public on the NativeScript org on GitHub.
Okay, I guess I'll go for dinner. So,
take care, Jamie.
Cheers.
So anything future reaching or just even general high-level discussions there. Some other open source projects have a similar setup in this vein where there's an admin repo and more higher level community discussions are had. And so I think we plan to probably follow suit and do a similar setup for those sorts of things, yeah.
Well, I have a question if we're back to open questions.
Sure, Ken.
Well, I'm happy to send an email to support at NativeScript, but while we're on this call, I've been getting, so long ago, way back, Angular 1.5, before I touched NativeScript, everything, I'd set up my system to I have one repo that has a bunch of core libraries. They're all independent of on one another. There's probably like 10 or 12 libraries in there, various dependencies within that. And then the idea was maybe I would someday open source that once I got it in a way that I liked it. And then I have another repo, which is that builds off of that, but is my specific, whale related components for Happy Whale. And because NPM link always sucked, basically, that I ended up going, and this is before NPM 2, which allowed you to directly set it to be a file path, in your, now you can say this library is at this file path. I had instituted my workflow being I would install Verdaccio, and I would publish to that. And that's what I've always done. So I just publish to that, and I actually have another script that just, rather than because Verdaccio doesn't allow you to over-publish with the same number. You can go in and delete your cache and do that.
You can actually unpublish with the force flag.
With Verdaccio?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I use Verdaccio myself to develop out schematics. It's the best way to do it. So go on.
Okay. At any rate, I had just made up another system, very simple. I used Gulp for all my build stuff, and I just had basically a thing that just copied over. So I just cheated and pretended like that was the most up-to-date one. I just copied over the code from the one repo into the other, into the node modules of the one. Doesn't matter. It was just a way. Basically, you can assume I did it on publish and republish. Anyway, now, so I was upping my numbers on my thing, so I was trying to publish. But of course, Ivy, Angular doesn't allow you, this is an Angular-specific question, I guess, more than anything, doesn't allow you to publish with Ivy when you compile your libraries as Ivy. And so when anyway, I tried compiling with Ivy and disabled, and then when I use my libraries outside of that, I get that age-old problem that everyone got for various different things. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's basically, I don't understand this thing that you're exporting. Please add an @ng module. Have you seen any of that? Anything like that with building libraries?
I have when it's not in GCC compiled. Yeah, usually an error like that sounds like the library or something didn't get swept up with the NGCC compatibility compiler.
Okay, I thought about that and I tried that, and maybe I just didn't do it right. I don't know.
Yeah, NGCC is kind of what comes into play there, because if you have a library that for whatever reason NGCC is not picking up by default, so NGCC will pick up some by default, but it won't get all. And so that's why that NGCC config for NativeScript Angular right now exists, because it'll make sure that it actually does process that library.
Okay, that's it. So I probably should have just added my own libraries to that.
I would definitely try that. In most cases, you need the entry point dot for the root of the plugin in your NGCC, and then when you clean and rebuild, if you got a post install hooked up for NGCC, it should automatically pick it up, because it'll look at NGCC and basically process anything that's specified there.
Okay. Well, the way I've worked around it now is I have a post build which wipes out. There's an entry. The only reason you can't publish to Ivy, I'm putting air quotes and you can't see my air quotes. The only reason you can't publish with Ivy is because Angular puts a script in there that blocks it. So I just have a post build that wipes that script out, and then I can publish my.
Have you ever used ng Packager?
That's what I use. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, if ng Packager, I think, takes care of a good bit of things for you.
Yeah.
So if you're using that, yeah, you should be okay.
Right, but it's a weird script. Anyway, I just do a post install, wipe that script out of the package.json that gets built, and then I can publish fine. So that's how I've worked around it so far.
Got it.
I would like to figure out this issue at some point.
Yeah. Is that also something that can be observed on that project you posted?
I have to check, because it seems to only happen with my. Internally, if one library depends on another, it builds fine. But when I try to use it externally in another repo, then I get the error. So I haven't quite figured out why, the difference there.
As long as NGC is running over it and it's processing it, it should work. Yeah, because most of the trouble will occur if you try to run a project and NGCC had not run through the dependencies.
I'll try to recreate it in that repo, and
yeah.
And see if I can do it. Okay.
I'm actually hoping Angular 10 gets away from some of this as well, which we're looking into here, as to whether you still need the NGCC post-install hook. Most likely you do, but we'll post a blog about that here again, probably by end of this week or early next week, once that support is there, to clarify the changes needed.
Is there out there, because my library setup was kind of homegrown, kind of based on early adoption of Angular libraries, but it's a little bit homegrown. And I'm just wondering if there is here is a absolute system that Angular's are expecting you to do, to have a system of libraries, a repo that's just a set of libraries that you can, depend on. I want to do it by the book exactly. I'm sure I'm very close, but I might be doing something a little bit weird. Maybe. I don't know. Is there an example out there? I can never find it.
Perhaps we can take a look on that either later today or tomorrow. Most likely tomorrow, Ken.
Yeah.
Be happy to kind of peek at that with you. Yeah, it definitely sounds very Angular specific, but probably really particular with kind of the way you're setting it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Outside of that, does anyone else have any other questions? Well, we'll close the call for today. Again, appreciate you guys joining, all that were able to show up, and hopefully that helps give some insight into what we're looking at here on our side. It's not an exclusive list, I'll say. We definitely have a lot of things in mind, looking at a lot of things. There's really nothing that's off the table in terms of ideas, thoughts, and desires and hopes. We love this framework to the core, and we didn't even mention the mono repo strategy here, but we're hoping by next week, latter part of next week, we'll have mono repo on the core repo that will help manage a lot of the open source a bit better, streamline it. We're going to GitHub Actionify most of all things related to the framework, and should make it a bit easier to contribute as well and play around with things in the whole stack. So we're excited about that. But we'll see you all next week, same time. And in the meantime, please try V8 if you haven't. Definitely try this version here for sure. It's looking pretty stable on our end here. So you guys take care. Hopefully everything's going well with everyone individually during this time. And we'll look forward to chatting next week.
Thanks again, Nathan.
Yeah, take care, everybody.